Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It has officially been a year since I left Sioux Lookout. And I just wanted to, which is why I'm laughing at the streetcar, because like my life, I was gonna say my life couldn't be more different if I tried, but I tried really hard. I have had several anniversaries this year, and it just really made me realize, like this weekend really made me realize how much my life has changed. Before we get too far, my name's Laura, I'm 32, I now live in Toronto, but this time, well, I guess not this time last year, but in January, I moved to Toronto in January, but last November, I moved away from a really small town that I lived in for almost 4 years. More than 4 years? 4 years. From 2021 to the end of 2024. So 21, 22, 23, 24, yeah. Anyways, and I moved up there for a job. It's very far up north, like 400 kilometers, 4-hour drive north of Thunder Bay, kind of up north, not where the highways end in Ontario, but like the town before the town where the highways end, even though there is 3 hours between Sioux Lookout and Pickle Lake, which is where the highways end. And I spent a lot of time flying around Northern Ontario into different First Nations communities, doing public health work, and that's what I spent my 4 years in Northern Ontario doing. It's where I started my YouTube channel, and it has been a year this weekend since we left. So we packed up. We have to backtrack a little. I had hip surgery last August. And we need to back up even further. I had a job interview for the job I currently have now in March of 2024. Didn't hear anything, assumed I didn't get it, and then got sent for a referral with a hip surgeon in May 2024, had the hip surgery in August 2024, and then like was off work for like nearly 6 weeks, was back at work a week, and got a phone call from, I was going to say my now manager, but she's moved on. So my now former manager, offering me my current job. And I was like, yes, I'm still interested. However, I'm physically not able to move to Toronto right now. I was still on crutches, or one crutch, I think, at that point. So I was able to start work remotely in October, and then I'd been talking to my parents, and I was off crutches. I still wasn't allowed to drive long distances. I was working fully remotely, and I had full medical accommodations for 6 months after the surgery, which took me into February 2024 or 2025. So I didn't really have to be in Sioux Lookout anymore. It was just the fact that I couldn't physically move myself home. And because I'd been, off on disability and stuff like that, I didn't have that much money saved up to hire movers. So my parents drove across the province in November, picked up a U-Haul in Thunder Bay, drove it up to Sioux Lookout, packed it for me. I did most of the cleaning and stuff. Like I had almost everything like packed by the time they got there. My mom drove my car home. My dad pulled the U-Haul trailer home in their car, both filled to the brim with stuff. And my cat Montana, who has since passed away, the whole drive to Sioux Lookout when I moved there in March 2021, he screamed the whole way there. Like, the whole 15-hour drive to Thunder Bay. He was better the second day from Thunder Bay to Sioux Lookout, but he screamed the whole way there. He did not make a peep the way back to my parents' place. I found that very amusing. But they got to my place on the 9th, or on the 8th. We had one last dinner in Sioux Lookout, and then packed up all my stuff, returned my router, returned my mail key, and then we left Sioux Lookout about 2 p.m. on Saturday the 9th and we stopped in Nipigon for dinner at this really cute diner called Ducky's Diner. Highly recommend if you're going that way. And then we drove until we couldn't drive anymore, which was Scriber, Ontario, and we stayed in a really crappy roadside motel. But it only cost $100, so it was okay that it was really crappy. And then we were going to try and make the whole rest of the way home, but then my parents' car that my dad was driving started acting up. There was oil in the fuel, and there's not supposed to be oil mixing in the fuel. Or there was fuel in the oil. One of the two things. Either way, it's bad. But luckily there was a dealership for their car there. So we just stayed in Sudbury that night, which was actually good for me because my hip I wasn't supposed to be, when you have hip surgery, it's almost better, like you're too tired to stand, but it's almost better if you can stand because you're not really supposed to be bent. Like the fact that I'm sitting like this compared to last year is a miracle. But yeah, we stayed in Sudbury that night. My dad got the car fixed, and then we came the rest of the way. I was really glad that we stopped. And as much as like I would have loved to not pay for a second hotel room and stuff like that, and my parents really wanted to get back to the farm, etc., etc., I was really glad we stopped. I think Montana was glad we stopped. I actually think my parents ended up being glad we had stopped too. It is easily doable in 2 days, but one of the days is a big day. And ideally you need to leave earlier than 2 p.m. on your first day. Anyways. But yeah, both of those towns are, like my parents live in Ontario, Sioux Lookout is in Ontario. It just takes 24 hours to drive across Ontario. Literally. That's not an exaggeration. And I've just been thinking so much about how, like, people have been asking me, how are you liking Toronto and stuff like that. And Torontonians love to complain. I think it's their favorite hobby. And obviously I'm still in like the rose-colored glasses and stuff, but I love it here. I'm so happy, and I've always been a glass half full, very optimistic person. And I was miserable in Sioux Lookout. It's actually kind of funny that I'm talking more about this because I made a video of my last week in Sioux Lookout, and it didn't do very well at the time, but it does okay now. And it gets comments of people who are looking at moving there, and I don't regret moving there at all. It was really good for my career. I met some of the coolest, best people there. I also met a couple of the worst, but I met some of the very best people I can possibly imagine. And I am so lucky to have those people in my life and still call them best friends. And the way that the work in First Nations really not opened my eyes, because I knew it wasn't my first time working in like real poverty settings or like living next to real poverty settings. I mean, we were never in poverty, but like there were neighborhoods in Tennessee that we would like go through on the school bus that were like true poverty. And a lot of the housing in some of these First Nations like reminds me of the housing that a lot of Black people live in the South, and some white people, but mostly Black people live in the South, and in like these really rural, poor areas, which is what Ontario's north is. It's like as remote rural poor as you can like possibly imagine, plus there's no road to get to a city from there, so like it's exacerbated by that. Anyways, this doesn't need to become a treatise on the treatment of Black people in North America and of First Nations in Canada. Not the point of this video. However, the work that I was doing there was eating me alive. And as much as I don't know that my current work fulfills me in the same way, I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. It was killing me. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but I don't think it is. And I needed to get out of there. And like going back to people in Toronto, I love to complain. People in Toronto think that the cost of living here is like the possible highest it could possibly be in the entire planet. And yes, rent is very expensive here. But people here have no idea how much food can truly cost and how much electricity can cost, or water. Like basic things that have to be brought all the way up there. My rent is more expensive, but I don't think my actual living expenses are any higher, which nobody believes, but I think that's true. Anyways, when I was living in Sioux Lookout, what I said I was looking for in a place I wanted to live was coffee shops, Pilates classes, international airport, live music, coffee shops, Pilates classes, international airport, live music. There were 5 things. Coffee shops, Pilates classes, international airport, live music, and bookstores. Yeah. Those were the 5 things that I wanted, whatever town I ended up in. Because I wasn't like particularly set on living in Toronto. Toronto does have perks in that I already have friends here, which is nice. But I have loved this past year. I think if Montana had not died in August, I think I could have called this a perfect year. Which is crazy to say. But the combination of not being in pain anymore, thanks to my hip surgery, and being here and having access to things and being able to take my volunteering with the sorority from virtual to in person sometimes, like 50-50 I would say now, because I'm not in Guelph full time, and how much easier it is to get back to my parents' place. I haven't flown international. Well, I mean, I went to Kentucky in June with my volunteering. I know we aren't Canadians and traveling to the United States, but it is occasionally unavoidable. I am having such a good time. Truly, like, I don't know how else to describe it other than I'm having such a good time. I love walking everywhere. I love public transit. I love how easy it is to get a doctor's appointment. I love my new hair that I just got done. I'm going to see Sabrina Carpenter tonight. And I get to sleep in my own bed. I don't have to drive 8 hours to see a concert. 8 hours one way to see a concert. If I wanted to, I could go out and get any kind of cuisine I could possibly imagine for dinner tonight. I'm going to make dinner, but I could. I've been to so many coffee shops this past year. I mean, that part is impacting my budget. And I'm so happy with my life right now. And yeah, I wanted to reflect on the fact that it had been a year, and maybe I should have journaled first to kind of organize my thoughts a little bit, but I am so thrilled to be here. And it is weird that it's been a year since I left Sioux Lookout, but it hasn't been a year since I moved to Toronto, because I I was not ready. My hip was not ready yet to be here. Also, it was just going to be so much easier to look at places and stuff from my parents' place because they're only 5 hours away instead of 19. So, yeah. But I went to my parents' place after Sea Lookout and got in with a really good physio in their town. And I was literally able, I was literally able to hit the ground running when I got here, but I was literally able to hit the ground walking when I got here and not limping and not sore. And I was able to handle the subway steps and the steps into my apartment because I don't have an elevator in my building and like carrying all my stuff up and down and up and down. And it was so nice to be at home for so much of Christmas last year, even though I didn't have any time off really over the holidays, but it didn't matter because I was working from my parents' place anyways. So I guess if you think, like if you are really in the thick of it, where your job is draining the life out of you and you hate where you live and you don't see a future where you are, it gets so much better if you put in the effort. You have to put in the work. Things don't just get better because time passes or whatever. You have to put in effort to make things better. If you don't like your job, you need to be applying to jobs. If you're applying to jobs and it's not going anywhere, which this is influenced by the job market, hire somebody if you can afford it to look at your resume and have them rewrite it. Look at your cover letter. That is one area of what I will waver on my anti-AI stance is cover letters, because I hate cover letters. I think they're useless. But if it requires them, that is one area where I will soften my stance is on AI. Anyways, if you don't like where you live, figure out what you need to do to move. If there is something about your life that you don't like, change it. It's that easy. You just have to choose to change it and figure, and like actually, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to change my job and do nothing. Like that's the most concrete example, is we all know that you can't just hate your job. Like if you hate your job and don't do anything about changing your job, it's never going to happen. Everything else in your life is the exact same. If you hate your hair but never go ahead and get a haircut, I mean, maybe what you need to do is let it grow out. But if you hate your hair and you're not doing anything about it, like getting a haircut or growing it out and then getting a haircut, like you're going to hate your hair forever. If you don't like where you live, but you never look at another place to live, or start saving so that you can afford another place to live, then you're never gonna live anywhere else. Like you have to choose to make a change. And once you choose to make a change, that's when things start to happen. And once things start to happen, they kind of all happen. Like I don't think my hip surgery, had I had it down here, would have been as smooth of a process. Like as much as it sucked to have to drive from Sioux Lookout to Winnipeg and back for my hip surgery, the fact that I was in Sioux Lookout and my parents were able to come, I think it would have been very different if my parents hadn't been able to come. But my parents stayed with me for the first week after my hip surgery, and they drove me to Winnipeg and back. And then I had friends who stopped in like every other day to make sure I was okay. The grocery delivery guy he didn't just like ditch my groceries at my door. He would bring them into my apartment for me. Because the town of Sioux Lookout is so small, I was able to drive myself to physio because it's only like 2 blocks. Whereas like, I can't imagine being on crutches here, especially not having a car. And like, especially in my building where it's a walk up and I have to go up and down a lot. I had 3 stairs in Sioux Lookout on my deck that I had to go up and down into my apartment. Here it's probably like 20, 25. I can't imagine that. So like the fact that I had the job interview and then I didn't hear anything. So I went ahead and with all my hip surgery stuff. And then I moved to Toronto. Like, that is divine timing. That's the definition of things that would happen the way they're supposed to happen. Because it just wouldn't have gone as well if that timing hadn't lined up. Yeah, that's my that's my rant. That's my vent. I'm having a coffee to give myself some energy before Sabrina, and then I'm going to, I think it's like 3:30 would be my guess. I'm going to make some dinner, do some makeup. I want to get down there for like 5:30, I think. I don't have to do my hair, so that's great. And I might give it a little, it felt a little flat as I walked home from the hairdresser. But my life has got immeasurably better because I chose to make a change. I chose to continue applying to jobs. I saved up money so that I could move. I did those things. As much as the timing was kind of divine, the timing only happened because I made it happen. I went to the doctor about my hip. I was a squeaky wheel about it. I was in pain. I mean, it took me 7 years to go to the doctor about my hip. But yeah, I created the conditions for the divine timing to happen. And I think that's the way it has to be. But let's go see Sabrina Carpenter. I literally could not be further back if I tried.
I'm sorry, look at how crazy that looks on my phone. Like,